Hello, hello everybody. Thank you for joining me today. This is the Big Africa podcast, and I'm your host, Bamai Namata. And today we are with an amazing guest, a friend, big brother, an inspiration. We are with Dr. Alphonse Tata. You're a leader. You're a leader in the field of development and humanitarian work, someone with a lot of private sector experience, a mentor to the youth, and also an advocate for children, and I'm sure a family man. Is that the big picture of who Dr. Tata is?
Thanks a lot, my brother Bamai, for inviting me to this program. It's always my pleasure to share my thoughts with the wider world as to what I see as a way of contributing to the growth of young people in Cameroon, in Africa, and the world at large. I think that is a very brief but captivating summary of who I am. I'm passionate about youth development. I'm passionate about African development. I'm passionate about child protection. I'm passionate about the strengthening of the private sector, because it is only through these that we can stand strong as a country and as a continent. Thank you.
Great. That's incredible. I've seen you many times mention the fact that like most people across Africa, you came from humble beginnings, and you've been able to make something of yourself. You're the leader of a major organization with a large portfolio. So how, in terms of how you were able to live from point zero to where you are now, what are some nuggets, some lessons that you can share with us that you were able to gain in your time, making that journey, climbing right up to where you are now?
Thanks a lot for that question. The error that most people make is to think that where they come from should determine how far and where they should go. Wrong error, a very wrong thing to do. Where you come from should allow you to sit back, retrospect, and plan your journey. Because your point of departure and how far you can go will depend on how you've planned it. Coming from humble beginnings should not be seen as an obstacle. Rather, it should be seen as a motivation. If you started at the level of B, your objective should be to get to G, F, so that your child can take over from there and take it right up to Z. I believe that I understood from a very early age that I needed to work extremely hard, more than people who were born with a golden spoon in their mouth, so as to stamp myself as someone who would be a force to reckon with within my society. And from that standpoint, I started by really taking my studies extremely serious. In fact, I used to very much use the principle of opportunity cost in economics, whereby each time I wanted to get myself involved into something, I started by asking myself, is this thing necessary? If it wasn't necessary, I could very quickly shove it aside and concentrate on the things that would help me to become a better person and to be able to impact my environment as a result of that. So I've been a very focused person. I don't spend my energy on things that would not add value to me as a person, to my family, to my community. And of course, by doing that, I've never lost anything. I'll give you a simple example. As a young man in Cameroon, it's fashionable to go drinking every weekend. But the question I ask young people is, has there ever been a national award for those who drank the most? The year just ended, for example. And as a result of that, they were given an award and maybe given some sort of a lucrative contract to make them earn a better living. So if you forgo some of those things that are not necessary in your life, you have nothing to lose. It gives you more time to be focused. It gives you more time to concentrate. It gives you more time to put your energy and resources into things that can help you grow and, of course, help your community grow. And that has been my principle since I was a child up to this moment.
That makes a lot of sense. Basically, I think it's the same thing as delayed gratification, as in, you put your energy into what really matters, so that if, for example, by the time you've achieved everything you wanted to achieve, if you decide you want to be the biggest drinker in Cameroon, when you've already achieved everything, then you can do that with ease and, not have to worry a lot about your future. Yeah.
For sure. And I often tell people that it only gets better. Let's take the simple example of music. You're not going to say, I miss to go to the club to dance this music. Better tunes will come out weeks, months, and years after. You cannot say I missed to buy this car. Better cars will be released. You cannot say I missed to buy this telephone, this brand of telephone. Better telephones will be produced. So by foregoing some of those things which are not necessary by that material moment, you are simply preparing yourself for the better in the future. Because we say in economics that savings is the foregoing of present opportunities for the prospect of higher levels of future opportunities. So if you forego it now, in the future you'll be able to access even better resources, better opportunities, and you will still enjoy yourself. So why go down that path and mortgage your education, mortgage your future, because you're chasing what is happening in your environment at that material moment?
Yeah, yeah, that's great. And earlier you touched on people who also came from a bit of a humble, disadvantaged background. And for many of those type of people, from my experience, I see that people usually find it uh, difficult to interact in a professional environment in the way as their peers who maybe were born with a golden spoon. And a lot of times, this type of people suffer a little bit from imposter syndrome, and you don't feel you're enough somehow, even though you get right there to the top. What are some strategies that someone like yourself uses to cope with things like that?
As far as I'm concerned, I see every human being first as a human being. Your background, your bank accounts, the status of your family, that is not important. What I see when I'm interacting with anybody is this person is a human being on the same basis as myself. And as such, I can relate with them without any form of inferiority complex. From the moment I can defend myself, from the moment I can bring value to whatever conversation is being held, the moment I can bring my contribution to whatever project is being discussed, of course, that person, wherever he's coming from, irrespective of his background, I see them as an equal partner. And I would not for once be held back by the imposter syndrome whatsoever. So that's the way I see things. I don't believe that human beings are superior to others. I don't believe that. I believe that we are all human beings. Because of changing circumstances, you may have started on a different footing. You may have started at a different level, but that does not make you superior to me. Because in a normal circumstance, we're supposed to start at the same line before we move forward. But if you, by dint of what your parents had, you're able to start at a certain level, it doesn't make you superior to me at all. That's the way I see it.
Yeah. That's true. That's so true. And I think many young people have a hard time really understanding and realizing that no matter who it is, it's really just another person who has the same life, sometimes the same worries as you. The goals, they go and they do almost the same human things that you are doing as well. They may be doing it in another scale or at another level, but it's really basically the same things.
Yeah.
And yeah, I know you're really, really passionate about young people and the workplace and how they can present themselves in a way that is more professional, basically. But why do you think it's important for people to be able to present themselves appropriately, especially in the professional setting?
I must say that you are your mannerisms, be it in the private or in the professional sphere. In the workplace, your value is going to be judged not only by what you know, but how you manifest what you know. Which means you may be an excellent accountant. You may be an excellent grant writer. You may be an excellent project manager. There's an issue with your mannerisms. It's going to absorb all of that professionalism. And you'll be seen as a problem rather than a solution. So I believe very much that while you are in the professional environment, you must show top-notch professional traits. You must be able to respect professional ethics. You must be able to know how to communicate with colleagues, partners, stakeholders. You must be able to know how to differ with people. You must be able to know how to convey difficult messages. You must be able to know how to disagree with people. It's a mixed bag of things that you need to do as a professional. And that is what differentiates you from a charlatan. Because a charlatan literally is going around the circle without knowing where they're heading. But the professional knows exactly what is expected of them, how he should do what is expected of them, when he should do what is expected of them, and what he should not do within that environment. That is what builds your respectability within the professional environment. Within my team, there are two keywords: professionalism and loyalty. Loyalty means while you are within that organization, your actions should not be seen to be antithetical to the interests of that organization. You should be able to do your job the way it is expected of you, keep professional secrets, represent the organization well because you're an ambassador of that organization, and anything that falls short of these makes you a non-professional or a quasi-professional. And I'm someone who is stoic as far as ensuring that people are professional is concerned. From the personal standpoint, it is difficult for you to be a professional and be a wayward person, personally speaking, because most often than not, professional ethics spills over into your personal life. I was sharing a story some time ago where I spoke with someone on the phone and I ended the call and said, "Kind regards, Alphonse." I thought I was writing an email. And we laughed over it. You have nothing to lose by being professional, but you may have a wealth to lose if you are not. So why not choose the safer side, which is remaining professional, doing things right, being ethical, being respectful, communicating in a way that takes into account the other person's point of view, and all the other mixed bag of things that find themselves in that sphere of professionalism.
Yeah, very true. Do you think this spills over, of course, onto professional platforms, digital platforms like LinkedIn and other places?
Of course, if you go through somebody's post on LinkedIn, some people mistake it for Facebook. Some people mistake it for TikTok, for Likey. No. LinkedIn is an online professional platform where people share their CVs, their achievements, and all of that for other professionals to see. It's a platform where people look for opportunities, scholarship, jobs, non-paid positions, board positions, and all of that. What you share on that platform is a clear reflection of who you are as an individual. If you are a professional and you find yourself on LinkedIn, what you write will differentiate you from some other person who is on the same platform who is not professional. And the same thing would spill over into the other social media platforms where you have profiles. For example, Facebook. If you look at someone's Facebook profile, which is more of social rather than professional, you'll be able to tell if this person is professional or not by the kind of things they write, by the way they differ with people, by the kind of things they publish. So it is really clear that in order to continue to shine professionally, your digital footprint has to reflect your professionalism, be it personal or professional. Let's take a simple example. Nowadays, because of AI, organizations dig deep into the social media to see what potential employees are doing. During an interview process, you could be Googled. And the next thing they see is you insulting someone who differs with you on a post on LinkedIn or on Facebook. That alone is going to be a red flag, because that would mean you could be toxic if you're brought into that environment to work. You could be someone who is confrontational, someone who has negative energy. So I tell people, remain professional, whether or not it's your personal or private life, because that could play for or against you at the right moment. And it doesn't matter when you did what on the social media. The records are always there. Someone can dig into your profile and see what you published 10 years ago, and they can use that against you. I remember an episode in Nigeria where someone went for an interview in a bank. And when he got into the interview hall, the first thing that was projected on the screen behind him was an insult. He had written under the page of that bank that this is the most useless bank in Nigeria. And that was the end of the interview, which means before you write, you must think and think and think again and tell yourself that this thing is right before you can go ahead and write it. If it is not, then you have to refrain from it, because in the world of digital technology, whatever you do online could eventually play for or against you at the right moment.
Yeah. So, with regards to the world of work today, things are changing so rapidly that sometimes I think it's hard for people to catch up. How do you see the future of work, not only in Cameroon but across Africa? How do you see the future of work, and how do you think young people are going to fit into this new world of work with artificial intelligence, robotics, and other technological tools that are, taking a lot of jobs, but also creating opportunities?
One of the greatest opportunities we've had in the 21st century was the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic. And I'll explain to you why. Before the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic, home office, telework, distance work were far-fetched, especially in African countries. But since necessity is the mother of invention, when COVID took a toll on African countries, companies, and all of those, people were forced to take up the thinking glasses and devise new strategies on how they could continue to run the operations of their organizations without staff having to commute to the different office locations. And you see that during that period, there was an upsurge in homework. They understood that people could sit in the comfort of their bedrooms and work. People could be in the kitchen and work. People could sit in their sitting room and work. And that has been the new constant around the world, where organizations are now giving room for staff members, depending on their circumstances, to take up alternative ways of working. And that has not changed the productivity of companies. In reality, it has even increased their productivity because it has enhanced work-life balance. So from a standpoint of futuristic thinking, the future of work in Africa is immaterial, which means the African youth must understand that there will come a time when some organization will not even have offices, where they'll be expected to sit. I take the example of Streetchild. I report to people who sit very far away from me. I report to people who sit in DRC, Manchester, Norfolk, Ottawa, Canada, and all of those. So you have a team that is spread throughout the world, but work is going on, and efficiently so. If we want to succeed as a continent, because we cannot get ourselves off the rest of the world, remember the concept of globalization, which is gaining grounds by the day, we must be able to take into account these changes in the workplace. We must be able to invest in digital technology. Soft skills. It is going to be impossible in the next 3, 4, 5 years for a young man to succeed if they don't have well tried and tested skills in IT. They need to be able to manipulate all manner of platforms. They need to be able to use all manner of equipment, because if they don't, they'll be left behind and the world will move ahead and leave them behind. So we are saying that, and this happens to be one of the 3 main areas which is of interest to the government of Cameroon: ICTs, renewable energy, and agriculture. These have been highlighted as the 3 main sectors which would lead to Cameroon becoming an emerging economy by 2035, which means even if you are a farmer, need to know IT, because it's a new constant. With your telephone, you can monitor the weather and know what dispositions you need to take to ensure that your crops are not destroyed by the climate change related issues. So we're saying youths must have an open mind to learn a mixed bag of skills, not skills that are necessarily directly linked to their domain of specialization, which means if you are maybe a topographer, it doesn't stop you from learning things from the other domains which will help you better do your job as a topographer. So that is the mindset which will help us to grow as young people. I have the feeling when I speak with young people that they are too narrow-minded. They think along the path of what they studied. My degree was in political sciences, but my first job was in the banking sector, microfinance. But I did the job well, because I believe that I had to take up other skills, other training opportunities that would allow me further solidify what I'd learned in political science and history and apply it into finance, microfinance, banking. This is the kind of mind frame we need, that people should be able to think beyond, like Walter Roney has said in Wretched of the Earth, beyond the boundaries of their nostrils, and look into the horizon and see the bigger picture and prepare beforehand what is needed of them before that bigger picture finally comes a reality.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. But you touched on a very, very serious issue about the possibility of some people getting left behind. What are some solutions that you think these people, because obviously, um, an old man who is in his 50s or 60s, yeah, many people are very adamant to change in terms of accepting and adapting to new technology. How do you think these type of people will be able to cope?
That category of people will be left behind. Because there are two things that will happen if you refuse change. Change will leave you behind, or change will change you. Because that change will necessitate that you mutate what you think to fit into the picture. Else you become mundane, you become outdated. Irrespective of your age, you're supposed to reskill and upskill as a function of what is being dictated by your environment. More so with the young people, because they have long years of potential career in front of them. If they do not prepare for that, they'll be left behind and become irrelevant. Which means in an era of technological development, artificial intelligence, robotics, young people must look at all of those things as an advantage, because many are those who have argued that those things will take away jobs. But you should understand that it is still human beings who sit behind the machines to work on robotics. Human beings sit behind the machines to work on artificial intelligence. So for someone who is ambitious and who is futuristic and who wants to take advantage of his environment, they will start looking at opportunities that will crop up behind those new technological movements and position themselves by getting the right training, getting the right skills, and getting the right attitudes that will put them in a vantage position to be able to come on board and help deploy those resources and those applications for the betterment of humanity.
Your organization, Streetchild, is, I guess, just from the name, one can basically understand a little bit about what it does. But I know it's really about helping young people, vulnerable young people who are in difficult situations. I know that there's a lot more that it does. So what does it entail working for Streetchild, and how do you see that organization being able to change the world as we know it?
Streetchild was founded in 2008 in Sierra Leone when the founder and CEO, Mr. Tom Danaf, visited to volunteer. And he was taken aback by the scale of school dropouts, scale of dropouts, by the scale of commercial sex workers, by the scale of teenage mothers. He now brought up the idea of creating an organization whose mission would be to take children to school, ensure that they are safe and effectively learning. Remember, children are supposed to be learning. A child who has missed their education is a potential threat to their family, to their neighborhood, to their town, to their country, and to the world at large. And a child who has gotten the wrong education would still be a threat to their nation. So Mr. Tom, in creating a Streetchild, had a vision of a world where children will be able to acquire numeracy and literacy skills as a foundation upon which they could build a livelihood. Talking about livelihood, before you do anything in life, you need to know how to read and write and count. Irrespective of whether you're a carpenter, photographer, you're an engineer, you're a driver, whatever thing you do in life, you must know how to read and write, you must know how to count. So building upon that foundation, we also work in the domain of livelihoods by training young people, giving them life skills, giving them the opportunity to acquire know-how that could allow them to set up businesses or to pick up jobs within organizations. We do child protection services, we do technical vocational education and training, of course, sports and development related activities, like the one we just launched in Limbe 2 weeks ago, where we'll be sponsoring 200 girls, teenage mothers, IDPs, and school dropouts to learn a trade. And at the end of that period, we will buy them startup kits, sewing machines, dryers, and all what they will need to start up their lives as decent human beings. So really, Streetchild as an organization is one which perches within the boundaries of humanitarian peace and development nexus, which is becoming the talk of the day, because you cannot talk humanitarian alone. You must bring in the peace element and eventually the development element so that there can be sustainability in the interventions of the work that the organization does. Else, you'll be creating the dependency and underdevelopment syndrome, where people will sit back, fold their arms, and wait for other NGOs to come on board and give them handouts for them to continue to live as decent human beings. So we work in Cameroon mainly to ensure that children go back to school, People who have lost their livelihoods have the opportunity to take their broken pieces and put them together and walk up as decent human beings, work in the domain of peace development, because peace is something that has led to what we have today, lack of peace. And of course, we ensure that there's collaboration amongst local partners to deliver the much needed relief to the most remote parts of the country and make these people to once again come off their horrors and stand on the pedestal of success in life going forward.
You talked about, not wanting people to be dependent, of course, on your organization or other international NGOs. Is this really a big worry in terms of current humanitarian work that is going on? Is this a big worry that all the humanitarian agencies come together and try to work towards making sure that people are not reliant on those interventions long term?
The error that people make is to think that the moment you hear of humanitarian organization, sit back, fold your arms, and wait for things to be brought to you. With the limited funding available in the world, the changing ecosystem, with the competition amongst local and NGOs, I use the word competition very cautiously, resources are limited. And there's not going to be a way when an organization would continue to come to the assistance of people in need in a specific part of the world. When they are assisted, the expectation is for them to be able to stand on their feet and walk in the direction of where they want to be. That is why more and more local and international NGOs are designing projects which are sustainable in nature. In the case of Streetchild, we have, for example, the family business support for education, which means in addition to ensuring that children are in school, safe and learning, we also develop activities around the caregivers and their parents, which could potentially avail them of the opportunity to take the lead in their livelihoods, to take the lead in income generation, to take the lead in the acquisition of skills that could be useful to them and eventually those children. And this is what we've done in Douala in the Street to School project, where we were able to fund 50 caregivers and parents to be able to set up businesses so that they could maintain their children in school. Really, if we send children to school this year, next year we'll be looking at a different set of children. The school year just ended, we sent 7,500 children to school. This year, we'll be sending a different set of children to school because we expect that their parents would have taken the necessary adjustments within their lives to maintain these children in school. The project I mentioned in Limbe is one that is going to lead those young girls to fend for themselves. Many of them are already parents. They have children. They'll be able to fend for themselves and send those children back to school. I think the message is clear. People should stop seeing humanitarian organizations as organizations which come around to give handouts, which come around to give clothing, medication, potable water, school materials to people. It should be seen as an organization that helps people to stand back on their feet and take control of their lives in order to walk forward in the direction of where they want to be. And that is the message that I always send across each time I find myself involved in a conversation with beneficiaries of our projects. Look, don't go and lie on your laurels. We have helped you. Take this and try to make sure that you take the lead by doing other things that could make you sustain yourself and your family and avoid falling back into the issues that may have caused you to need the help of international NGOs.
Yeah, that's great. That's great because ultimately, you want people to be self-sufficient on their own. That's the whole reason of having organizations that support short term towards a longer term future.
Yeah.
And you talked a little bit about competition in quotes between international and local NGOs, and the whole conversation nowadays around localization, around making sure that a lot of the official development assistance is going to local NGOs and local community-based organizations. At the level of Streetchild, at the level of other international organizations that you've been involved with, is this a conversation that is being had to make sure that local NGOs are able to lead in terms of in terms of accessing funding, even while the partner, of course, with international NGOs based in the global north and all of that?
Streetchild as an organization prides itself with being a leader in localization. As a matter of fact, all our projects are implemented through local partners. As it stands now, we have a little under 24 local partners which we use in Cameroon. Because we believe that by using local partners, you're using one stone to shoot many birds. First, it guarantees sustainability. Local organizations will remain on the ground. They have experience, they have access, they have clout, they have buy-in, they have a mastery of the local context. By working with them, we're simply saying, this is your thing. We are here to give you support. You need to take the lead in this. And that's why Streetchild never really hesitates whenever it has any opportunity to make use of local partners. The project I mentioned in Limbe is being implemented by local partners. We have the Elevating Local Leadership in Emergencies project funded by USAID, which is aimed at making sure that local partners take the lead in humanitarian response, that they take leadership positions in the clusters, that they are able to set within their structures the necessary compliance, financial, procurement, human resource requirements to be attractive to funders, because the funders are always weary of giving money to organizations which are not structured. So we work with these local organizations to develop what we call the organizational development model, whereby we assess their needs and develop a roadmap of how we can work with them, bring them to speed to what will be needed by the donor communities. We train them in resource mobilization. We train them in how to write grant proposals and all of that. So really, Streetchild is proud to say that we are a leader in globalization. And of course, the results are clear. All the projects, like I said, which we've implemented in Cameroon have been done through local partners, Shumas, NADEF, AMEF, Sudase, Tina Life, and of course, all the other organizations, Queen Nina Foundation, Good Hope Charity, at My 16, and all of those. So we feel that by working with these local partners, we're empowering them to eventually take the lead. Who knows? In the next 3, 4, 5 years, Streetchild might just decide to focus on more other countries and allow local partners to take the journey forward based on what we've done with them, based on the trainings, based on the coaching, based on the mentorship, and based on the collaborative spirit we've established with all of those. So we think that in order to ensure sustainability, we cannot come on board as an INGO and claim to know everything. We work in collaboration with local partners. They learn from us, we learn from them. We do not come on board to play the big brother role. In fact, there are many local NGOs which have staff members who have way more experience than INGO staff. And in such a case, we sometimes call them up to lead training sessions, which we sit down and take and follow what they say in order to improve on our capacity to implement and help those people in need, 2,500,000 for this year.
Yeah, that's great. 2,500,000 in need. Is that for Cameroon?
Yes. The humanitarian response plan for 2024 targets 2.5 million people in Cameroon out of the over 3 million who are in need of humanitarian assistance.
That's a big number. Eventually, I guess all the factors that are causing some of these humanitarian emergencies, such as climate change, insecurity, stability, the refugee crisis from countries like the Central African Republic. Long term, where do you really see that changes can be made to help, to plug some of those gaps that lead to a lot of these crises?
Really, Streetchild as an organization works by using evidence on the field. We're an evidence-based organization, which means every domain in which we work, every project we write, every proposal we write, is informed by hard evidence from the field. We just finished a needs assessment with UNICEF, where we're trying to find out what the needs are of children affected by crisis. Far North, East, Northwest, Southwest. And the figures from that report are really mind-blowing. which means in order for us to be efficient in what we do, we start by studying what the situation is on the ground. You mentioned climate change, for example. That's a big question for us. We're now integrating climate change and environmental related matters in our proposals, because we think this is one of the things that is causing people to be in distress. Go to the Lake Chad Basin. It has shrunk to almost 10% of its initial size many years ago. And that is causing a lot of livelihood-related issues with the people around there. It's causing conflicts between farmers and grazers and all of that. It's causing distress linked to health, diseases, because people are drinking from the same source as animals, for example. So we think that in terms of looking at the future of humanitarian action in Cameroon, we need to attack it from the point of view of the problem tree. Cause, immediate cause, effects, solutions. Because I have the feeling that oftentimes when we want to solve problems in Cameroon and Africa, we focus on the consequences rather than going down to the roots to find out what is the cause of this problem. Because if you solve the consequences, the problem will still germinate and it will grow and it will become some sort of an activity ad infinitum, which means you'll be doing it over and over again and expecting different results. So that is really our approach. Of course, there are organizations which focus on peace building. For example, Local Youth Corner. There are organizations which focus on advocacy, peace advocacy, advocacy with the government to cause them to see things differently, advocacy with other actors to try and bring them on board so that they can sit around the table of negotiation and iron out the differences. So really within this space, everyone has their niche. And niche is really to make sure that those children are taken into safety, school and learning, and that their caregivers and parents are given the livelihoods needed to maintain them in school.
So to go on a bit of a lighter note, I see you a lot of times you talk about the ability for someone to stay in one job basically for a very long time. It's a sign that that person is incompetent. Of course, I agree with you on that on a general level, but I also think sometimes people can get stuck in jobs because maybe they have a family to feed, they have a lot of other considerations. Do you agree that there can be these other causes, or do you think people who are competent, ambitious, will just constantly be on the move?
Of course, I know you took that statement from my LinkedIn profile. Each time I make a statement, and of course, you know that in the social sciences, things are appreciated on a relative basis. That doesn't mean there are not people who stay on the job for long and yet they're very competent for different reasons. But I feel that ambitious and forward-looking professionals should have the propensity to move jobs at reasonable intervals. I'm not saying that you should pick up a job and the next 6 months you're moving to another job. No, at reasonable intervals. I tell people this, I say, if it were an election, if I stay on the same job for 4 years, I would have served a mandate.
Yeah.
And within 4 years, I would literally be doing the same things. I'll be working using the same policies.
Yeah.
I'll be collaborating with 80-90% the same colleagues. I'll be talking to maybe almost the same stakeholders. At one point in time, it becomes monotonous. When you move jobs, you're putting the clock at zero. You're going to be learning a new set of policies. You're going to be dealing with a new set of colleagues. You're going to be having a new set of partners and stakeholders. You're going to be having a position whose job title probably be different from what you held in your previous job. That further enriches you. You learn new things. You recalibrate the knowledge you already have. You think differently, and you add to what you already knew before then. And when you do that 3, 4, 5 years in your career, 3, 4, 5 times in your career, trust me, you'll be much better than someone who has been on the same job, even if they've been promoted 3, 4, 5 times, who has been in the same organization. You'll be much better than them. I went for an interview many years ago in an embassy, head of finance and administration. And the ambassador said, Alphonse, I have the feeling that you're a job hopper. I said, Your Excellency, what do you mean by that? She said, I have the feeling you move from job to job. I said, of course. And I told her that even when your father has a house, comes a time when you decide to go and rent your own house, even if you live next to your father. And I told her, Your Excellency, I'm bringing to your team a mixed set of skills, taken from the different organizations I've worked with. And I want to assure you that I'm not going to be coming to the team to stay forever. I'll leave someday. So be prepared for that beforehand. And she laughed over it. So I'm saying that you don't move for the sake of moving. You move when you know what you want. Promotion takes place in 2 or 3 ways. Number one, you stay on the job and wait for HR to send you a beautiful letter informing you that you've been promoted, something which is very, very, very unlikely. Number 2, you look for an opportunity within a bigger organization. That is a promotion for you. Number 3, you look for an opportunity within a similar organization but with a higher position. That is still a promotion for you. And it is not easy to change jobs. It takes courage. It takes wit. It takes determination. You write a letter or you write a job application and there are 400, 500 other applications competing for the same position. The fact that you were shortlisted, interviewed, and found to be the best candidate is a trophy for you. The fact that you decided to leave that job when you were permanent staff, you've gone somewhere else to start from square one, probation, confirmation, learn the style and management of the leaders of that organization and grow and meet your objectives is a plus for you. But people who want things to be easy would say, I already know this organization, I'm a permanent staff. Why should I bother myself looking for a job elsewhere? And it's from that premise that I say some people may stay on the same job for long because they want to hide incompetence. Because just applying to jobs and getting recruited is not easy, especially in a job market like ours, where 300,000 young people leave school every year. And out of that 300,000, only 5% are really qualified. And of the 5%, there are less than 1% of opportunities for them, which means the competition is very high. And so if you move and you succeed to pick up other jobs, it means there's a value that you have to add to the organizations that are recruiting you. It was from that premise that I made that. But of course, looking at it from another premise, especially our female colleagues, some of them would say, I have a little child I'm taking care of. I don't want to bother myself. Let me stay and take care of that child because a new job might bring in surprises. I may have to travel regularly. That is the exception and not the rule. That is the exception and not the rule because there are always modalities within organizations to take care of your family situation within the framework of a work-life balance.
Definitely, that's great. There are definitely exceptions to that. And I agree. There's a huge competition when it comes to jobs, especially good quality jobs, which are very hard to find in a country like Cameroon and of course other African countries. So if you're able to be someone that attracts a lot of opportunities and gets selected to multiple of those, it definitely means you have a certain value that these people are seeing and appreciating. And also the stats when it comes to jobs and those who get out into the job market every year, that's very frightening. 300,000 and that's a lot. And I see that it's a challenge governments and other policymakers being able to create enough jobs for all these people. And long term, do you really see this trend continuing, and what could be the effects of that if enough jobs are not being created? All these many people who are coming into the job market to fit into.
The high rate of underemployment and unemployment in Cameroon is a direct consequence of many factors. Number one, the educational system of Cameroon. The educational system of Cameroon is certificate-oriented. It is not skills-oriented. We can understand that at the primary and secondary level, focus should be on the acquisition of literacy and numeracy skills, which gives the learner a broad foundation to understand their environment,
Yeah.
That's why in secondary school you take biology, geography, economics, philosophy, maths, further mathematics, and what have you. All of these are intended to give you a foundation to understand your environment. Beyond that, your focus is supposed to be on acquiring skills which could avail you of the opportunity to do two things: create a job or pick up a job. Because oftentimes we talk about entrepreneurship in total neglect of the fact that everyone cannot be an entrepreneur. As a matter of fact, the mortality rate of companies in Cameroon is 75%, which means every small and medium-sized enterprise being created in Cameroon, within 4 years, 3 or 4 die. 3 or 4 SMEs created in Cameroon die within their 3rd anniversary, which means the mortality rate is very high, linked to the business environment. The business environment, as seen by successive World Bank Ease of Doing Business report, has shown that Cameroon is not the best location, even though there have been improvements along certain lines, but it's still a difficult business environment. Number 2, young people are supposed to be focusing on the acquisition of STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics related skills. These are the skills which make things. Every other skill is to sell, defend, buy, or promote. When you talk about marketing, the marketing is something that is hard. When you talk about lawyers, you're defending maybe a trademark of maybe a product someone created. When you talk about accounting, it's keeping records of the TV that someone created in Japan. So if we focus on STEM, we're building a strong foundation for job creation. But the reality in most African countries, Cameroon inclusive, is that we focus on those domains which are intended to support the STEMs, the hard inventions, marketing, management, human resource, journalism, law, and all of that. So there is a need for us to really go back to the drawing board. Look at our state universities. There are 11 state universities in Cameroon. But the biggest faculties are those faculties offering English modern letters, law, political sciences, and all of that. The question is, looking at it from the standpoint of the Cameroon's 2035 vision, the 2035 journey, are those the things that we need to create jobs in the domain of ICT, renewable energy, and agriculture? No. Which means we need to follow the example of countries like Rwanda, where President Kagame had to shut down a lot of faculties because those faculties were seen to be producing certified illiterates. And I use that expression very deliberately. An illiterate is not necessarily someone who cannot read and write. An illiterate is someone who cannot be useful to themselves, to their families, to their communities, and to their country. Why go to school then? So I'm saying that it is good to have 11 papers at the GCSE O levels, and the whole neighborhood will sing your name as an intelligent child. 5 A levels. But beyond that level, you shouldn't go to university and take up a degree in history. I read history. I have a degree in history. But is that what you need in order to succeed as a human being? What you should be studying should be something that will give you numeracy, literacy, and technical skills, which could allow you to create your own job or to pick up a job. If you have a degree or an HND and you cannot create your own job or pick up a job, then there's a problem with your qualification. And that is one of the reasons why we have a huge number of underemployed and unemployed youth. From the policy side, the government needs to work on the business climate. I tell people, it is not the role of the government to create jobs. No. We're not in a communist system. The role of the government is to create an enabling environment which allows actors within the national territory of that country to take advantage of these, create jobs, so that young people can use this to earn a living, and other parallel activities can crop up around those jobs, because it will take 4, 5, 6, 7 different layers of job creation, direct and indirect, as a function of what the government would have done. For example, instead of buying computers from China can set up a computer assembly plant, and you employ a lot of people through direct employment. There will be indirect employment through suppliers, people selling gadgets around, people selling food, people transporting, using that value chain approach, forward backward integration. So really, it doesn't make sense to have a degree and end up as a bike rider. That's underemployment. But people would argue, oh, he can earn his living well, so this is how he has a job. No. If you wanted to be a bike rider, you need to go and have a degree in the university, for example. So I think if we do not change the way we see things, the situation would even get worse as the years go by. I'm afraid to say that.
Yeah. Yeah, it looks like a scary future for sure. But hopefully, there's a lot of actions that organizations that are supporting the governments themselves. I'm sure this is a valid worry, because if you have a large number of young people who are sitting around doing nothing, it's a powder keg that just waiting to explode and really cause a lot of damage to not only peace, but social cohesion, criminality, things like that. Definitely, there's that worry.
Yeah. So which means that, and like I said before, we must develop the attitude of solving problems by looking at their causes. Nowadays, you find people sitting exams where the minimum qualification is O levels. Some of them have masters. Some of them have PhDs. And surprisingly, some of them still fail when they sit those exams. They are not sitting those exams because they really want those jobs. They're sitting those exams because they're desperate. And when you go for a job out of desperation, you'll never be productive. You'll never be productive. You will fool around. And you will say, I have 1,000 staff. Out of them, 200 are productive. The remaining 800 are people idling around. And we see this a lot. And that is why it is necessary for us to really reorientate the ecosystem in terms of what children are studying, in terms of the domains in which the government is promoting the creation of institutions. It's true that the higher educational sector has been liberalized. But liberalization does not suggest laissez-faire. It suggests action within controllable limits, so that the government can say, hey, you're trying to train people in a domain which would not be productive for our country. Do you want to rather invest those resources in X domain, which we think ties with our 2035 plan, so that these trainees can now live and contribute in a practical manner towards the realization of our objectives. And one thing I want to mention as well is the balance between theory and practice. When I was studying in the UK, 70% of my lecturers were people coming from the industry. Many of them never even had a terminal degree. Only 30% were academics. In Cameroon, it's the reverse. If you do not carry the title doctor, professor, literally no higher educational institution will be willing to recruit you. I tell people, an accountant with a degree who has been working as an accountant for 10, 15 years is more profitable, more productive, more efficient, more knowledgeable than a PhD holder in accounting who has been teaching accountancy. And we need to therefore see how we can again create an ecosystem where young people are able to navigate theory and practice. I made this plea when I was in partnership with GCAM. I said GCAM has more than 1,000 companies. Now GCAM, of course, after the fusion, companies and associations. Open your doors to young people to come and learn. Let them see how things are being done practically, so that they can marry the theory that they've learned in those tertiary institutions of learning with what actually holds in the industry. That is the fastest way of learning. Not reciting theories, not reciting what philosophers have said, not quoting politicians. That is not what is going to help us develop ourselves as a nation. We will develop ourselves by doing things right, by trying to produce new things, and by making errors, by getting off from those errors, correcting them, and improving on the things we want to put in the market for the betterment of the nation called Cameroon.
Dr. Tata, you have a lot of good ideas about how to take the country forward. Do you see yourself taking on the role of a policymaker sometime in the future?
Well, we are always available to serve our nation. but at the same time in a capacity where we'll be given the leeway to convey our ideas.
Yeah.
I do not fancy any professional activity which makes me to have my hands tied behind. I'm a free thinker. That's to say that if I were to contribute otherwise towards the development of Cameroon, I would want to do so within an open space. I wouldn't want to do so within the framework of a position which allows me to start picking my words and choosing, like as if I want to prepare beans. Let's start picking here and there. So we are ready to serve the nation, and we have been serving the nation in different ways in all the different organizations where I've worked. I've served the nation. I've been in partnership with different ministerial departments. I've been in partnerships with different private sector actors. All of these towards contributing to nation building, especially because I'm a crusader for private sector development, especially as concerns the development of the private sector. The strongest economies in the world today, the US, Japan, Germany, they are what they are because of a very strong private sector. The political side only comes as icing on the cake. Because if your economy is weak, there's no way you'll be a superpower. America is a superpower because of a strong economic base. It has now been complemented by a strong military base. If you have a very weak economy, you cannot tell the world what they should do. America can dictate to the world because of its economy, because it can pull the strings. If we want to develop ourselves, we must be able to open up the economic space and allow actors to take advantage of available opportunities to create wealth, employ young people, and by doing that, we'll be able to spread the wealth. Remember, economics is about production, consumption.
Yeah.
If you do not produce and people consume, there will be no economy. So we will be able to have an economy and a system where there is production. Goods have been produced with value, value addition, transformed. Those goods create wealth, goods and services, and people take advantage of those, and the economy grows, and actors can now bring on board their ideas and contribute in their little way towards the development of the Commonwealth.
I was tempted to call the podcast Deep with Namata because I felt like, it was really important to have deep conversations because I feel that a lot of times, when people are having these types of conversation, it usually stays at a high level, and it doesn't really go deep enough into some psychological issues that I think are really, really important. For example, if you look at the professional world, especially in our country, you'd see that a lot of people, and it comes back to what we talked about earlier, they don't understand that the next person, your boss, your country director, your regional director, the global director is another person like yourself. And of course, even though you're serving at different levels, you're supposed to work together as equals, basically. But I'm sure you see here in Cameroon, there's a lot of sycophancy. A lot of people who are a lot of personality cult, where one person is looking and feeling like a god, and you have people, a lot of young people, some of who may be employed or underemployed, unemployed, and they don't understand that these people are people like you who can make mistakes, who are not fallible, and I think that's a mindset which needs to be dispelled in some way, and I'm quite happy that you talked about that earlier. But what do you think are some of the causes of these ways of thinking, and how can especially young people get out of that mindset?
Desperation, and it is a direct consequence of what we spoke about: underemployment, unemployment, unavailability of jobs. When, as a young man, as a young woman, when you are struggling to have airtime in your phone, when you're struggling to have transport to travel to an interview location, when you're struggling to pay your rent, it is eventually going to affect your outlook, such that anyone who has those things, who can offer you those things, begin to look at them like a demigod. Because you are like, let me do this, maybe I can have this job and I can now pay my bills, I can now pay my transport, I can now put data. But in developed societies, and this is where you see the difference, in the UK, there is no psychophancy. There's no deification of human beings. People call their bosses by their first names. You wear the high commission, same as me. We address supervisors by their first names. You address the high commissioner by his first name, or if it's a woman, by her first name. And he remains the ambassador, the high commissioner, the head of the mission, because the society from which they come has set that standard. But in a society like ours, the whole thing has been made to look very paternalistic, whereby the boss is seen as your savior, and you are seen as someone who has to pay allegiance to them so that they can continue to save you by giving you that job, so you can earn a salary and send 5K to your uncle back in the village at the end of the month. That is where the problem is. You'll notice that most countries with a weak economic background tend to have that kind of phenomenon. But the strong economies, it is very limited. It doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It does. And it also exists in specific sectors. But in a case like ours, where there's acute underemployment, very few job opportunities that are befitting for young people, people are forced to think that by paying allegiance, you're going to increase the chances of getting a job offer. I interact a lot with young people online, on LinkedIn. Oftentimes they're right. And they're like, will you reply? And I'll reply. When I'm replying, I don't reply as if we're having a board meeting conversation in a very, very interactional manner. And sometimes I share my numbers. Say, you want me to help you talk you through how to write a good CV? Call me. And when they call me on the phone, sometimes they want to speak English. I jump into pidgin English just to make sure that they should understand I'm a normal human being. I'm not a superhuman being. I may be the head of an international NGO, but I'm a normal human being who can interact with people, who can talk with people, and who can share ideas with people without making them feel inferior. And this is the same spirit which I've instilled in my team. As a leader, you are nobody without your followers. It is said that if you're a leader and you don't have a following, you're only taking a sports walk. So within my team, I ensure that everyone feels at home. We can interact, we can chat, we can smile, we can laugh, we can crack jokes while doing our job, so that everyone should know that they are human and their dignity is of paramount importance to everyone. The problem with us is that job seekers always feel vulnerable when they are faced with people whom they think have the power to give them job and take them out of that situation of desperation. That is not supposed to be the case. It is not. Like I said from the beginning, we are first and foremost human beings. Every other thing that adds on that issue of being a human being is only a plus, and we cannot use it to really oppress others. That is my take as a human being and as a leader.
Yeah, that's great. And for me, over the last few years, I've really been embracing the philosophy of Stoicism, which basically centers around the fact that we are human beings and we are a social community where we are there to help each other. Basically, we are there to help each other grow in one way or the other, and that is basically a purpose for being here. You're a country director, you're a leader in your organization. Someone else may be a job seeker,
Yeah.
And they may be feeling that maybe they're lowly, or they are nothing just because of their status or their professional status. But at the end of the day, it's all about us helping each other. Like you talked about, maybe you've helped some job seekers better design their CVs or write letters and things like that. Just that is like a lot of help that may someday help someone get a job, either with your organization or another, and that on its own constitutes a really big part of the help that even 2,000-3,000 years ago, people were already thinking about some of those ideas. How do we help each other to make sure that we fulfill the purpose of why we're here?
But another issue that I must point out is there are two things involved. Let me speak like a Nigerian comedian. There are people who actually need help, but they do not know that they need help. I volunteer a lot. I lecture in higher educational institutions here in Yaoundé, free of charge, as my contribution towards instilling the right knowledge in some young people. I share my number sometimes on LinkedIn to young people who write me inbox. Call me, let me coach you on this thing. Sometimes I see what you've written on LinkedIn and I say, this person has not understood what this thing is all about. This platform is all about. But you see some of those young people, they're unable to jump at such opportunities and get coached, get mentored, get handheld so that they can improve upon themselves. So some of them really need help, but when you extend an olive branch to them, they develop an attitude of feet dragging. I remember some time ago, I published a post on my LinkedIn profile saying that I needed 10 young people to train them on job search techniques. Someone inboxed me and asked if there was going to be transport to the venue. Free of charge. These are things I want to do. I take consultancy appointments from time to time in my private time.
Yeah.
When I do things like this, I'm paid a lot of money per day. But you want to do this free of charge as a way of contributing towards the development of the youth in your community. Somebody writes you and tells you, is there going to be transport fare to get to the venue where this training is going to take place? That is a clear sign of someone who needs help and does not know that they need help. So sometimes the young people themselves are a cause for concern in terms of the way they see things. It is not about money. It's about acquiring something which you could eventually transform into money. Because money is first of all an idea, so it becomes liquid cash. If you don't have an idea, no one is going to give you money. Because it is about give and take. It's about win-win partnership. It's about exchange. And I think that young people really need to work on this aspect if they want to stand out and if they want to grow. And another important aspect is the openness to continue to learn and to recognize the fact that they don't know anything. I have a doctorate degree, but I say that I don't know anything. Because the more you study, the more you realize that you know nothing. I learn every day. I still spend my money taking short courses. A few months ago, I took up the Chartered Manager course where I got accredited as a Chartered Manager because I believe that it is that continuous zeal to develop myself which gives me a competitive advantage in the job market over other people who may not have as much credentials in terms of learning opportunities, short courses as me. But young people feel that the moment they've had a degree, it is their last bus stop. They don't want to attend any webinars. They don't want to attend any free online courses in different platforms. Agora, ITL, Stanford Online, Harvard Online, and all of that. It is those things that make you competitive within the job market because what you study today, the next 10 years will become mundane and obsolete if you've not learned other things to beef up that knowledge and make it more useful within the framework of what is happening within your environment at that material moment.
I really think that people nowadays, they get a lot of information on social media, on Google, and they feel that they're experts at a lot of things. Do you think it's possible to say do one Google search and become an expert at something?
Expertise is a result of an incremental effect. Research, experience, peer-to-peer learning, coaching, mentorship. If it were a matter of reading something on Google and becoming an expert, then all of us would be experts. All of us would be experts. So it is really a cumulative effect of what someone, an individual, has been doing for years, which has allowed them to perfect and, of course, try to practice what they've learned. Let me take a simple example. I wouldn't claim to be a journalist, but I can read journalistic materials on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on Google, and on other social media platforms. That only gives me an opportunity to have an idea, because the world of today is one where you cannot afford to be blank in domains that could have effect on your life. It gives you an idea of what is happening in those domains, but it doesn't make you an expert. which means in spite of the limited knowledge you may have acquired in those domains through research, when experts in such domains are talking, you need to take down notes and learn more to add to what you already learned. So this is about intellectual humility. I have my domains of expertise, but when people who are experts in their domain speak, I listen. I listen and I learn. And I learn and add to what I already know. So, and this is one of the issues which is a problem in Cameroon today. A lot of young people lay claim to expertise in domains in which they have little or no knowledge. They'll argue with their seniors, senior colleagues, experts in that domain about things they've read online. It takes a lot of humility to listen to people who are authorities in different domains and learn from them. That is the best way of learning. Because it is about dialectics, like a philosopher has said. You send through the argument and the counter arguments that come through, and the argument that carries the day is the one that should be upheld as the true version going forward. Yeah.
Yeah. That's true. And also going into the issue of again young people and knowledge. I was traumatized recently when I saw the video of some young people at the University of Boya, hundreds that were trying to register for French exam, which is part of the process of moving to Canada. And yeah, really it was a fight. People lifting each other, trying to get space. And yeah, I'm sure you saw that as well.
Coincidentally, I was in Boya that day. And I was actually driving down towards UB Junction. That happened around Malingo Junction, just before Malingo on the left, a popular bank whose name I want to withhold. And I was like, what's happening here? And I had to stop for a few minutes, and someone told me that people where they were registered for Go Canada. I said, what? And then I drove down. I was going down to UB to see a former classmate who is now a lecturer. And the crowd I saw down there was simply mouth-blowing. And I had, these are people who are here to take the exams, the English, the language exams to go to Canada. So if every young person is seeking to leave the country, it's a problem. Yeah. It means it's a problem. It means it's a problem from the intellectual level. Because what is in your minds is that out there we'll make it. And anything that is within Cameroon is a failure. And you look clearly, you see that 95% of those are not even qualified. They don't have any specific skill set which they will put to use in Canada to help develop the Canadian economy, make money, and send back home. All they want is, go first, go see a day first. Let me first of all leave and see what's happening out there, and the rest will be history. So this is really a problem, and it's still a direct consequence of the job market in Cameroon, of the educational system in Cameroon. And that is why we still need to go back to the drawing board to try and correct the errors that we've made as a country in terms of educational system, in terms of what we tell the young people, in terms of what the young people themselves do. Because it's about time management. How many young people spend 10% of their day learning something new on the social media? Very few. They'll probably be watching funny videos, arguing over things that do not concern them, salaries of international footballers, Wizkid and Davido who get money pass, and all of that, which has no effect on their livelihoods. So it's about using your time in the right manner to develop yourself, develop your family, community, and the country at large.
Yeah. Really true. And yeah, it's basically one of the reasons why I decided to start doing this. And having, of course, influential thought leaders like yourself to talk to young people and show them that obviously there's another way. And I'm sure someone like yourself, you're very well traveled to multiple countries, and if it was as bright as it can be, as most people think out there, and if Cameroon was basically hell on earth, I'm sure you would not be here.
Sure. I wouldn't be here. And to tell you this, and sometimes to some very reasonable extent, families of such youths put a lot of pressure on them. When I finished my studies in the UK and informed my family that I had to come back home, it was a hell of trouble for me. I even heard that my mother went to a pastor to pray and find that it was normal. So what are you coming to do back in Cameroon? What are you coming to do here? You need to stay out there and get your nationality and all of that. And I came back home.
Yeah.
It is about your mindset. If someone with a good mindset is put in the desert, he will make something out of it. But if someone who has nothing upstairs and with a funny mindset is put in an El Dorado, they will make nothing out of it.
Yeah.
Oh, look at Dubai. Dubai was a desert some years ago. But now everyone is going on vacation to Dubai. Burj Khalifa, and very good places that we have over there. Because the people who were in Dubai had something upstairs, which they were able to harness and develop the country to be what it is today. And if we do not change the way we think, even if all the world is put in Cameroon, young people will still think that by going to Canada, by going to the US, even through Mexico, crossing the Darien Gap, is going to be the best option. And they will continue to put their lives at risk while they have things back home which they can fall back on and earn a livelihood and develop the country and develop the African continent.
Yeah, yeah. Very true. A sad situation, definitely, but yeah, I think it's inspiring to see more and more people, even though of course there's a large group of people that are bent on leaving, but I think more and more people we see more and more people returning, we see more and more people staying and trying to make the most of course, a difficult environment. But just looking at, of course, we've talked a lot about what is happening currently and the past as well. But when you look at the humanitarian and development world in general, what type of future do you see for the sector, and how do you see yourself? What role do you see yourself playing in the future of the humanitarian and development space?
Well, I think, like I mentioned earlier on, we're gradually but surely migrating towards the humanitarian peace and development nexus, because it is a chain which culminates in development. But talking about it from the humanitarian sphere, a whole lot of humanitarian interventions are triggered off by politics in the international political arena. If people start doing things right in the international political system, there will be less humanitarian interventions and more development interventions. Humanitarian actions have a bearing on peace. If you solve the humanitarian triggers, to some reasonable extent solve the peace consequences, and the world would focus on development. Because humanitarian action and peace development actions come about as a response to humanitarian situations, which are in the most part human and man-made. To a very limited extent, they are natural disasters. I would say that most of the humanitarian situations in the world are caused by conflicts between actors, states and non-states. Very few are caused by things linked to climate change, natural disasters, which means if international actors get their act straight, they would limit the conflicts that we have in the world, and there will be a direct consequence on the amount of resources which are being channeled to solve humanitarian problems. Look at what is happening in Jerusalem, Israeli and Palestinian war. Look at what is happening in Ukraine. In fact, the war in Ukraine even took attention further away from Cameroon, which was already said to be the second most underreported and underfunded crisis. The war in the Middle East between Israeli and Palestinian actors has even taken us again further from that. People who would have normally funded what is happening here have now focused on funding those things over there because there's more coverage, BBC, CNN, and all of that. There's more visibility. So I would say I see the future of the world around the UN Charter being implemented, ensuring that guns are silenced, ensuring that people are able to sit around the table of negotiation and discuss as civilized human beings. Because you would notice that every conflict in the world ends around the negotiation table. So why go all that way, kill thousands of people before you go and sit down and talk, instead of sitting and talking and avoiding that? So that the resources that we have, which are already very limited, you can channel them straight on into development ventures, into ventures intended to bring about cohesion in the communities, peace interventions, so that we can develop ourselves and make the world a better place for all of us. Africa is a hot spot for conflicts. Look at what is happening in the Sahel, right?
Yeah.
Look at what is happening in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Look at what is happening in the Central African Republic, with refugees spilling off and arriving in the East region, and many other hotspots. Look at what is happening in Nigeria, in the Niger Delta. These are all man-made. If people do things right, this conflict will be reduced. In fact, I dream of a world where humanitarian organizations will be obsolete, where the world will be led by development-oriented organizations, implementing agricultural, irrigation projects, skills development projects, economic empowerment projects, and all of that for the development of humankind.
Development of humankind. Definitely, that's a perfect note to end on. Thank you very much, Dr. Tata Alphonse, for joining me on this episode. It's been very, very insightful learning from you, being able to share ideas on the humanitarian development nexus in Cameroon, but also looking at things across Africa. It's been a great conversation, and I look forward to continuing this offline, definitely. Thank you for joining.
Many thanks, my brother Abamai Namata, for first of all taking up the initiative to create this platform, you and your team alike, because nothing stopped you from probably taking the time and resources you're using to do this to have a good party at one of the
For sure.
and buy a bottle of expensive wine and ask the DJ to sing your name. But you've decided to channel it into a venture which has a direct bearing on changing lives in Africa. So kudos to you and your team for this very wonderful initiative. And I'm available to bring more insights as necessary in the near future.